that the practice, when we get into the flow, now we have to know two questions. And that is in the sense of how do we keep it going and what do we do with it when we have it?
So, a little update on my practice. So, yesterday, last night, and the day before, I sat for 1 hour straight each night, and it was absolutely wonderful each time. I was sharp the entire hour, and I never lost track of the breath even once. I was happy the whole time. It was absolutely great. The 2 nights ago, it was like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I hadn't gone to bed yet, but I had so
Uh-huh.
much energy afterwards that I had no desire at all to go go to bed, even though it was like 4 in the morning. And then yesterday, I did it, and I did go to bed after, but I still felt great, and it was just great. It was really nice. I just thought I'd report that before we talk about
Okay.
right livelihood.
One
So,
one comment on that is that yes, Anapanasati done correctly is energizing. That in
yes,
fact, feeling on top of your game is exactly evidence that you are practicing correctly.
right, right,
And
and
that's one of the reasons why the Buddha gives people full permission, almost in the sense of a direction, is that we teach wakefulness. I think, in
mm,
fact, we had talked about that at one time when you were working, then you were tired and you were not getting enough sleep. And I would say you
right,
got to get enough sleep. And then I think that I even said to you at that point in time is there will come a time when we change it from getting enough sleep into what do we do with our time when we've gotten enough sleep,
mm,
which is exactly what we're talking about of pointing out that, in fact, uh, this is part of the training on the Patty Mork. We had already started talking a bit about the Patty Mork before and all of that. Once a month in many places, and in some places they do it twice a month. I kind of believe that we did it once a month in the feeling of once a one month, as well as the fact that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's hair got really long before he cut it, and that they only cut it before Patty Mork as part of the ritual. Uh, so in any case, we also spend the night up, and that the common occurrence would be that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa would start teaching at about 2 o'clock in the morning.
mm.
And so everybody was already up and sitting around waiting for his talk, and he would talk then from 2 in the morning until sunrise.
Wow, that's
And
great.
then sunrise was when the monks would then get up, and some of them were getting up kind of early out of the thing to go out on Bendabat. So that was the reason for ending it when it did. But that now is the morning of the day of Patty Mork, is the night before Patty Mork. The monks are up all night. In fact, even in the old Jewish calendar, the new day started at sundown,
Yep,
not sometime deep in the night or waking up in the morning.
the lunar calendar. Yep.
The lunar calendar starts at night. So Patty Mork starts the night before Patty Mork, and the monks are up all night, intentionally so.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay,
kind of
so that's
amazing to me. Yeah, how the commonalities, between the ancient religions. There's a lot of more commonality there. But anyway, please continue. Yeah. The lunar calendar is just a great example of
right. Well, that's all they had.
that.
In fact, I like that very much. I enjoy mooning people.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
So anyway, um, back to what we were talking about. Yes, that the practice when we get into the flow, now we have to know two questions, and that is in the sense of how do we keep it going, and what do we do with it when we have it?
Uh, this actually, yes, and I had a question related to this, but
All right. Well, do you
is
want
it
to go
okay if
into that direction or into right livelihood? Both of them were worth an hour.
let's do the practice first, and I have plenty of time to worry about right livelihood for another time, or we could do that later today. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes, but let's let's stick to the practice for now, and then we can do right livelihood when it's best.
All right.
So,
So, in the correct practice, the the entire intention of one's early practice, the very first thing that's to be done is the removal of the hindrances, which can also be stated as removal of unwholesome thoughts and putting wholesome thoughts in the mind. This is the first step. And to do that step means that we have to do a bit of an investigation. In fact, to be able to do that, we're already noting.
right,
But if we talk about noting from the perspective of noting, then it changes a frame of reference.
right,
Because here it's very much like we're noting, but we're also on a fox hunt. In the sense we know what we're looking for. With the noting, it's like whatever comes up, note it, right?
right,
Here, we're going to say, um, uh, go out there and whatever it is that comes up, if it is game, kill it.
sure.
Okay, this is a
It's a
hunting
fox hunt
expedition. Pardon?
versus whack-a-mole.
Right.
Right.
This is a game of whack-a-mole. The Buddha actually talks about it in the case of the deer, excuse me, the cow herd the story that I've told you, right? And so this is the whole point about that we've really got to have a skin in the game so that we're actually, in a way, creating the reality that we're in right now in a way that we've never been able to create reality before. Now,
Sure.
the next point about that, this reality that we're beginning to learn to create is actually much closer to the actual real reality than the way that humans normally operate.
Sure.
Because the reality is that everything that can happen does happen right now. And anything that did happen has already happened and doesn't happen again. That Herodotus was right when he says you cannot step your foot in the same river twice. And
Right.
yet our whole culture is built upon building upon the past. Let's get a foundation here, folks, and
Yeah.
then we can build a higher and higher and bigger building
Yeah, and I think this
instead
is
of
the
being
big
just
flaw.
comfortable and happy sitting in a hut.
Right. I think this is the big flaw of psychoanalysis too, is focusing too much on the past.
Hmm. Yes, some of us call it psychological archaeology.
Right. I had a dream like that one time. Like it was very literal. I was driving in well, this sounds like psychoanalysis now, talking about a dream. But I was driving in
I
a
have actually read in On Interpretation of Dreams. That's the name of
me
the book.
too. Me too by Freud. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
classic. I haven't
You
read the
got to
whole
be
thing.
half Jewish to
I've
read
read
that
parts of
book,
it.
so I've got something in
Yeah.
there. The
Yeah,
Mormons
I'm
thought
sure.
it too because I've got some Indian blood.
There you go. It's a good book. We read. I took a class. I took two classes where we read Freud. He wrote another great one called Moses and Monotheism that I highly recommend. I think you would really like that. It's a short little book. It's like 200 pages, and anyway. But I had this dream one time where I was driving on the West Side Highway, on the outside New York, outside Manhattan, and I never drive here. It's one thing I really like about living here. I don't have to drive anywhere. That's like the best thing about this place, but or
Me
one of the
too.
best things, you know.
You live on an island, there's no place to drive to.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's great. I live on an island too, you know. But anyway, so I was driving on this highway,
Mine looks
and
like one, though.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But and I saw this big this like this section of this of off the highway that had these archaeological ruins, and I was really interested in that, and I wanted to go see it, and so I drove off and parked my car to get out and go look at in the ruins, and then I woke up. I had that dream several months ago. It was a kind of an interesting dream, but anyway, I don't know why I felt like sharing that, but you mentioned psychological archaeology. I just thought I'd share that with you. But it was a very interesting
Well,
dream for me.
the remembrance of the dreams and uh, the remembrance of the past is all stored. It's actually all made up in the same place, the hippocampus, and it's all stored in the same area, something like the cerebellum or things like that. And because it's in the past, you could imagine what the Buddha would have to say about it. Forget about it. A lot
Right,
of people like to do interpretation of the dream and sense that the dream means something. But within the context of Anapanasati, what it means is that it means that you're dreaming.
right.
So what? You're dreaming.
Yeah,
Uh, the um, the the phrase is burning by day and smoldering by night. All we do is put a blanket on it, but other than that, the mind is still on fire.
sure.
And this is why it's so important for Anapanasati, if people are going to sleep, is to practice a few minutes before they go to sleep to empty their mind so that they won't have so much dreaming, and then they'll get the rest that they actually need. As
Mm,
that begins to build up, pretty soon you go to bed at the same time that you're ready to go to bed, especially if you've already been practicing Anapanasati and you're nowhere near ready to go to sleep yet. You're still wide awake. Well,
right.
this is exactly the way that the Buddha would expect the practice to go, that you're actually
Mm.
practicing being awake, and now here you are. Ha ha! I mean, it's like we're this is 2 plus 2, folks. Here,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
we're practicing being awake and practicing energizing the mind and practicing energizing the body, then when that happens, that means that we're not quite ready for sleep yet. So that means that now you can begin to play with your day as if it were a toy rather than a routine.
Mm,
And you can start to catnap if you want to.
mm.
That
Interesting.
this is much more of a natural way of living that you see in the West for the past, oh gosh, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 generations, especially since we've had electrical lighting. But even in the old days, when the slavers slaved the slaves, they did it all day. And the slaves had all night off for rest. But that's not normal. In the old days of hunter and gathering, the afternoon was hot and everybody kind of took a nap. They even have words for it in certain languages, like in Mexico or like in Spanish, they have siesta.
Siesta. Yep.
Yeah, okay, but that has something to do with the weather, but it certainly does point that there's no reason to think that we have to get 8 hours of sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Right, right.
But that's exactly what it's like in the military. I gave the military's hours. Lights out, 10 p.m., reveille, 6 a.m., period. But that did not come because the Army and the Navy and whatnot invented that, but rather that was already part of the culture, that humans had changed from living natural lives with our natural sleep patterns. And one of the things about becoming a monk and living in Thailand is you can allow yourself to go back to natural sleep patterns. Isn't that amazing? Even the freedom to
Yeah.
go back and be natural the way that humans were thousands and thousands of years ago, where the position of the sun, the earth rotating around the sun did not determine my day, that I was not tied to a clock or any concept of a clock. other than a few things that fit in with things, for instance, about sunrise that we had talked about, is a good time for the monks to go out because in the Thai society, the people already know that when they get up in the morning, that the way to get rid of all of their garbage from supper last night is to give it to the monks when they're passing by. And the funny thing, though, is that in Cambodia they do it at a later time of the day
Mm,
because the monks go out then at 11 so that they eat by noon.
mm,
But it's different cultures. But the whole point is that when the culture decides when the monks come out, that's when the monks come out. And but that's the only schedule that they've got all day. The whole rest of the day is that. In fact, when I was a monk in the United States, and the Christians and whoever would come and give interviews and questions, they would always say, "Well, tell me about your schedule." And I'd always slyly rub my chin and says, "We do lunch." Because that's about the only schedule that's there.
mm,
And many monks spend up not burning late on oil, but are up at night. It is
mm.
very quiet. It's cool. If you're in the tropics, the nights are cool, and
Yeah,
so it's good to be up
yeah,
at night and asleep when it's hot.
yeah, I like being up at night or really early because it's a very
Oh,
peaceful time.
being up before the sun is really marvelous. That's a really nice time of day. Everything is still and quiet, and the dust is settled out of the air because there's no foot traffic or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's
it feels
beautiful.
clean.
Yeah.
That's like cleanest part of the day.
It is, it is. I used to live near Central Park, and I'd go there at like 4 in the morning, and the sun's just coming up, or 4:35, just starting to come up, and it was so beautiful. You know, no one's there. You're all alone. You just see the sun coming up, and the sky is like this really dark blue, just starting to lighten up just a little bit. It was
Hmm.
beautiful. I love that. Um,
Now, when the ordinary mind has already been established in a schedule of sleeping at night, then they're not quite alert to that. But if you are already wide awake when that time of day happens, it's marvelous
yeah,
because we're awake to that marvel instead of being semi-conscious, you know. I don't care about how marvelous the world is. I got to get my clothes on and get a shower and get out of here because I got to get to work. And that's exactly the way people think. Never mind
right.
how marvelous the world is right now. I've got work to do.
Yeah, I used to be on a rowing team at first university I went to, and we'd get up at 4 a.m. for practice at 5 on the lake every morning, and it
Hmm.
was just really beautiful, just being out there on the lake. 5, it's just starting to get sunny, and you can hear the birds, and the water is glassy because they'd like it at that time because that would be the time where there'd be the least amount of wind. So other
Hmm.
times a day, if you'd go out, it'd be a little windy and you couldn't row as nicely. Um,
It is the
and
best time
yep,
of day to get your mind together, and it's the best time of day to have your mind together.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
totally.
what we're practicing is we're practicing, let's get our stuff together, let's get our joy and get rid of these unwholesome thoughts and get our mojo going, get some energy here, let's get up for the game. Basically,
Yes,
and this is so different than the attitude of meditation. The attitude of meditation is sitting still and being quiet, and the mind is gone to who knows where, but it's
right.
supposed to be good way over there. And then
So
people come out
yeah,
of that kind of state and they say, well, what value is this? This is a bunch of work.
right. Yeah, I have a question about this that I've been waiting to ask for a little while now, which is, um, so I find myself alternating between Piti and Sukkha, and I don't really know what's better. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you could
Whichever you
alternate
want
between
that
those.
you don't have, when you want it, that's dukkha. When you
Mm,
experience it and are satisfied with it, whichever is coming, that's the correct practice. Here it is. There it goes. Here it is again. There it goes. Oh, you're here again, huh? I see you too. There you go. Ah, you're back. Ah, there you are. There you go. You hear
So,
what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the
yeah.
arising, passing away of phenomena, which is exactly what we wanted to get into in the sense of the original question was now that you can get yourself into those states, what are you going to do with your time? The answer is you're going to watch these very wholesome states arise and pass away.
Hmm.
That's exactly how the Anapanasati Sutta is set up, but for some reason it's hard to glean it out of there. But other suttas, like Sutta number 111, really point out this whole phenomenon of watching the arising and the passing away of every moment being different. Really get into the fact that you are in a flow and things are constantly fluttering and flowing and fluffing and flittering away and re-arising, and it is a marvelous show.
And it's Sutta 111.
To 111, one by one as they occur. What is that one by one as they occur? It's the phenomenon. And one by one means as they come up, the last one dies away.
And it's
One by
called the
one as they occur.
called the Anupada Sutta. I just searched for it. Okay, great. I'll read this one later. Thank you.
Well, let's put it this way. It's unlikely somebody intentionally wrongly named it. If it's MN 111, it's one by one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like in the Bible, it's like Mark 2:12, and then it's Luke 2:12, and I don't know the naming system for Buddhist
Yeah.
the
It,
Buddhist
well,
texts. Or
both
lunch
both in both
11:35.
in Buddhism and in the Bible, there's one thing that everybody knows, and that is how to find a passage based upon a name of a book and a verse.
Hmm.
Okay, that's true in both Buddhism and in Christianity, and they also have something else deeply in common, and that is once you have found the correct verse, doesn't mean a thing. Because you still don't know squat, but at least you found the right verse. You just
Sure.
don't know it yet. Okay, so that's the real issue is not that we can find it. The answer is, do we understand it when we read it?
How'd you like the Bible verse I sent you the other day? Lunch 11:35.
Oh yes, I've actually, that's in fact but that's not a Christian book, that's a Buddhist book.
Okay. Got
Lunch
it.
is a Buddhist book. It's not Christian. That's what confused me.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's exactly lunchtime, 11:35,
Sure. Great.
which is about the time that the monks stop champing and start chopping.
Sure. So, so you shouldn't. So when it. So okay. So a couple more questions about this Piti Sukkha thing. So
Okay.
what?
Okay.
So one thing I've noticed is, so I had an interesting thing happen yesterday, um, where the PD would come up, and then I would notice the PD, and I decided to start really noticing the PD, like really just going into it and just really studying that PD, and it would expand, and it would seem like it was less rough around the edges and more stable, and it would kind of stabilize and then kind of turn into something like Sukkha, but maybe a little different than my normal
Okay.
experience of Sukkha. So I'm
And so
curious
the
to hear your
whole
thoughts
show
on
then
this.
is to keep
Yeah.
watching that stuff as it goes into flow from one
Mm,
thing to the next. Uh, uh, there's always a constant show and flow going on.
mm,
And as we stay in our sensory awareness of watching all of that, and this is actually sensory awareness in the sense of even noticing our feelings, noticing how we feel, noticing the states of mind, and the various things that are changing within the mind, then now becomes the new show in town.
mm.
And there's something that's very unique about this also that needs to be pointed out, and that is all this stuff that we're going to watch, and we'll actually go through them as both groups and individuals in a moment. But the thing that they have in common is that all of these things are wholesome because
Mm.
we have already spent the time that it takes to remove unwholesome thoughts from the mind. Therefore, there are no unwholesome thoughts to bother with. In
Right.
that regard, that means that we're only going to need to study the part of the mind that is wholesome. And also, there's no reason to try to study the part of the mind that's unwholesome because that part of the mind is not working there right now. But we can walk right up to the door and kind of open the door and say, well, I don't want to go in there, and then close the door again. That's the kind of way that we're looking at it, in the sense of not allowing wholesome thoughts to come back in. So as long as we can allow the unwholesome thoughts to stay out, that means that we never get far enough into the sequence of Paticca Samuppada to get into the state of wanting something or into the state of trying to get rid of anything. And at that level, that means that we're kind of satisfied with what's happening right now. This is what we mean by wisdom at the point of contact. But the wisdom at the point of contact means that whatever we're now going to experience is going to be experienced wholesomely. And if we experience it ignorantly or delusionally, and we're not spot on to what's really going on, then we would uh, likely, through that ignorance, fall into a dissatisfying situation. Now, intellectually, anybody would recognize that if you had a choice between being in a dissatisfying situation and a satisfying situation, we would naturally choose the satisfying situation.
Right.
And yet, very many people find themselves in dissatisfying situations, but they don't even recognize they've got a choice to get out of it.
Right.
And what you're developing is you're developing the skill to wake up in time to recognize you've got a choice to get out of that stuff. And if you're
Exactly.
doing it while
Yep.
you're Uh-huh. And if you're doing it while you're practicing, that means that you can sustain these wholesome thoughts one after another, which means now you've only got wholesome things to note or to investigate. And that's what we're going to do now is we're going to start investigating because this investigation is now a new part of the skill development.
Mm.
Heretofore, we have been developing the skill of investigation. Now we're going to further develop that skill of investigation by investigating the investigation system itself.
Mm.
How is my investigation? What does it look like? How do I know I'm seeing clearly?
Mm.
All right. Then we can investigate other things like how is my effort. Is this the best effort in the sense, and we can say technically the correct definition of right effort is just enough effort that it takes to come out of unwholesome thoughts.
Mm.
No more effort is needed, just that much. Change the mind from, and so even if somebody's putting in a whole lot of effort, but that a whole lot of effort is not changing the mind from unwholesome thoughts to wholesome. And an example of that is, oh, look how hard I'm trying. I know I can get something out of meditation. Oh, I just need to keep doing it and keep working at it. Right? Still always wanting something and never coming to the point of, right now is good enough. Why should I want anything? Which means now that's the effort that it takes to come out of the unwholesome thought into the wholesome. And somebody there is spending all of that effort and still remaining in unwholesome thought. So one's right noble effort is also a small amount of effort to just move that thought. And if we have a bunch of negative thoughts in a row, that means that they get on a roll, which means it's hard to break the pattern. But if you just have one immediate thought, and then that thought is followed by a wake up call. Hey, look at that thought. Look at what you're doing. That's dukkha. Yeah, well, that's dukkha. Hey, Mara, I see you. Out of here. And then you throw it out immediately, and then it's really easy to throw out. And so
So,
basically what we're talking about is keeping the mind wholesome while we're inspecting only unwholesome things, knowing that if something unwholesome comes up, it's out of here before it gets in line to be inspected.
mm, right, I was gonna ask, and I think you might have already answered my question, but just to double check. Um, so I found like my favorite kind of wholesome thought, the one that most gladdens the mind, is noticing the unwholesome. And it's sometimes
Aha, I
very
caught
quick.
you is very wholesome. I see
Yes,
that.
and
There you go
yes,
again. I
and
caught you.
yes, and sometimes it's so quick that I don't even have the time to, like say aha, right? Like it's just like, oh, there it is. It's this tiny little thing. I can't even
By the
tell you
time
what's
it takes you
unwholesome
to
about
say
it.
it, it's already finished. That's the now.
Yeah.
Now, so what we were seeing there was the arisal.
Mm,
Now we want to also start to watch the passing away and the fading away. Watch
mm,
the frittering away. That every time this arises, this had to pass away in order for this to arise. And when something new arises, then this flitters away.
mm.
And so start paying attention to the flittering away, and you begin to see that, wait a minute, my whole life is in the past. I never do catch up to the present moment because everything has already happened by the time I know it.
Right.
And
Yeah,
and to begin
I
to see
once,
that,
yeah.
who in the heck am I? I'm always living in the past. I never caught up to the present moment.
Yeah, I once read that the way the ancient Greeks conceptualized time was it's like you're walking backwards. You can only ever see behind you. You can never see forward.
Can't see forward. We can't
Yep.
see it. And this is why the Buddha puts that whole point. And it's in this is like step 13, 14, 15, and 16 of Anapanasati.
Mm,
But it's also the key ingredient in this other sutta, number 111, that we put up. And that is to note these wholesome things in the sense that even the wholesome arises and passes away, arises
yep.
and passes away, arises and passes away. So this means that now we're going to be finished with all that unwholesome stuff, let it completely pass away. And
Mm,
to now we're going to start looking at the fact that the first thing, in fact, on the list of items is that the mind is capable of applying itself to wholesome and then sustaining it on the wholesome. So you begin to monitor wholesome thought, wholesome thought, wholesome thought, wholesome thought, wholesome thought, wholesome thought, like that. This is wholesome thought. And then we begin to see that the mind is, in fact, beginning to make connections in a new
mm.
kind of way because before the mind's been all over the place. But now we're
Right.
beginning to get the mind steadied into one wholesome thought after another, and it's amazing the change in mind that goes.
Yes.
And so we
Yes,
begin to watch that
yep.
change.
Yeah, these past 2 days, it was just so nice the whole hour that I didn't even like count down the time. I'll often, when I'm sitting, think, okay, 20 minutes left, 10 minutes left, 5 minutes, I'll do a little and I'll be a little bit happy because I'd been like just getting a task done, basically, is
Whippy,
my
I did 35
attitude.
minutes. I can do another 40. Yeah, I know that
Right.
one.
And this time though, these past few days, sitting for a full hour, and I've had this before with Anapanasati, but not for a whole hour practice. 'Cause this is my first time really diving in for an hour. Um, and I was like, I could keep doing this. I have no problem. This is nice. It's only 20 minutes. That's great. It could be another hour.
Ah, so
It
so
was just nice.
now you're
Yeah.
also ready. So here's something also new to do, but I do want to get
Oh
back with
boy.
you about the noticing of wholesome things,
Yes.
noting what is perception and all of that. But there's also the issue of what are you going to do when you finish your meditation session? Are you going to say, I've had enough joy now that I can stand? Or are you going to start practicing getting up out of your meditation posture, whatever that is, and maintaining that position in the mind so that you can keep it going,
That.
sustain it?
Yeah.
Even though you walk up to the dog and put the leash on the dog and you walk out the door, you do it completely full of joy and completely mindfully. In fact, the dog may enjoy that walk better than you dragging him around. He drags you around now because you don't care where he goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Because
that'd
you're
be a better
enjoying
way to
every
do
bit
it.
of it. Right. You're
Yeah.
enjoying the show. So you get yourself into a really good state and then start living your life that way.
Yeah. At Wat Cham Tong in near Chiang Mai, they taught me to end my meditation with metta, with making merit is how they called it. You know,
Yeah,
like
and I'm telling you to do that
yeah,
exactly with your dog.
there you go.
I'm just
Yeah.
giving you an exact example of it. Let the dog go where he wants to do. Give him the meta
Yeah,
now.
yeah. All right. Why not? Sounds good.
Okay, so how you end it is that you don't end it. You just get up and go about doing something now in that wonderful state of mind. And that is your meta,
Mm.
is to keep it going, keep it flowing. Practice
All
that.
right.
In fact,
All right.
start watching when it drains off because it will. The world will keep whacking you. And I mean, the dog will do something and you'll come right out of
Right. Yep.
it. Unless
No,
you're really, really on top of your game, saying every thought, you got to watch it. Am I really sustaining this thought? Am I really paying attention?
I
And so
had
we
that a
begin
few. Yeah. Yeah. I had that a few
this.
weeks ago. I had a great day, and then I go to bed and I wake up and the dog had diarrhea and he pooped all over the carpet and it was a whole disaster. And I was like, wow, this is how my
He
great
pooped
day.
more in your mind than he did on the carpet.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him, it was you that did that pooping.
Yeah, I guess. But anyhow.
So anyway, you can clean it up happily and be interested in his health and well-being, or you can kick the dog because you hate the fact that you got to clean his mess up. I mean, it's just a matter of attitude.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was unhappy. I didn't kick him or anything, because I don't believe in that. But I was
Before you answer
unhappy.
that, I want to
Yeah,
have an interview with the dog.
yeah. All right, he's right here.
No,
He's having a
no,
good
I'm
time.
I'm just teasing. I'm teasing.
All right. Yeah,
So this is the whole concept then of what do we do with very, very wholesome states because we're intending to spend a lot of time in the future in those wholesome states.
sure.
What do we do with it? The answer is we're going to watch, we're going to investigate, we're going to be on top of the game, we're going to start inspecting how the mind actually works. We're going to start looking at what are feelings. Now that I can control the feelings, start looking at the fact that at one time before you couldn't, they controlled you. Now you're actually able to control the feelings. So can you
Sure.
control them in the way now of making them very subtle? Can you bring them up to the level of exuberance and bring them down to the level of no more exuberance, but a sense of deep well-being and satisfaction, even further down into peace, down to the level of everything's all right, everything's fine, no worries, everything's going. And that's the level of upekkha. Now, upekkha can also be thought of as aloof or away from it or out of it. But we're not talking about aloofness in the sense of ignoring or out of it in the sense of not ignoring. No, this kind of upekkha is when we're really on top of the game,
Mm.
when we're really satisfied with the blanket we've laid out on our own mound of dirt.
Mm.
Okay, because we're now on top of the world. And we
Cool.
should have because we got it. Okay, this is that confidence, and we start to build that confidence. So that's part of what needs to be looked at. How's my confidence? How is my strength of mind? Begin to look for ways of testing it to see how am I doing here? Ikabuddhadasa even refers to it in the sense of sickness. Yeah, that's a great opportunity to practice. That's a
Right.
great opportunity to get right on top of the game.
Right.
Hey, not only is this disease killing me, but I can die happily. Because what are my choices? To die unhappily? And so this is the new way of looking at it is that we got to get on top of the game, regardless of how the show goes. What happens in the next act is not interesting. What's interesting is how you're handling what's happening right now. Because if
Sure.
I'm really good at handling what's happening right now, I'll be ready for Act 4
Yeah.
in a 3-act play. So this is what we do with that state. The number one thing, we get into it. Second thing is we learn to sustain it. We keep it going. But then later we begin to also recognize that we can maintain, like I was talking about, these feelings, to really get in touch with the feelings. And so we can bring them down quietly when we want to, and then raise them back up to the level of exuberance when we want to, because we've got
Mm.
full control over our repertoire. And part of the songs that we don't play is, I guess, the humorous way to say it is ragtime.
Mm.
That we don't go funky, we don't go into the unwholesome, we play sweet music.
Well, it's funny because your point about choosing to elevate or not, that I feel like that's kind of what was going on with my alternation between the Piti and the Sukkha yesterday. Is I was kind of going to the exuberance of the Piti and then back down to the coolness of the Sukkha. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm kind of bored of this right now. I'm a little bored, so I'm going to throw in some Piti again. And it's like, okay, enough Piti, back to the Sukkha, let's chill. That
Now
was
you're
kind of my,
getting it. Okay, so really what's going on is not only you are watching the arising and the passing away, by doing so, you're beginning to take control and manage your life.
right.
Congratulations. This is what it's
Thank
all
you.
about. Who's the boss here anyway? Who's the lion? You heard that game, like who's a good puppy? Well, who's the lion here? Who's the lion?
Yeah, yeah, getting there.
Yes, this is what we're getting
Yeah,
at is that confidence is based upon success.
right.
And that success is manufactured intentionally.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's done with a mind that's clear and pure and free from unwholesome thoughts. Because if we allow unwholesome thoughts in there, then we're basically poisoning our own brew. And that's what
right.
people do. They live lives of poisoned, self poisoning their own lives by always
Right.
telling themselves it could be better, or it could be better here or better there. Or in fact, everything's beautiful right now.
Right. Right.
So
It's
getting
funny.
into that
Yeah.
state of everything is beautiful right now and maintaining it now begins to be the goal.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I saw some family the other night. My cousin's getting married on Sunday, and he's my best friend as well. He's a very wholesome guy, and so his brother and his father were in town, and they were also at the dinner. His soon-to-be father-in-law and soon-to-be brother-in-law, and so it was a little bachelor, groom night or whatever the other night, and I noticed I was really just at ease. I was just having a great time. I was really, and the father of my cousin, who is my cousin is my second cousin, so his father is really my father's cousin. So that's first cousin. Once it doesn't matter, but I call him uncle. That's all that matters. So call him my uncle. And he's this kind of guy that likes to do these little digs, and likes to do these little poke you, a little bit. He likes to do that to
Passive
everyone.
aggressive, right? Okay,
Yeah,
right. He
yeah,
does.
yeah, and that used to really bother me,
He's got a
and
dagger, not a shotgun, right? I got it.
right, right, right. Used to really bother me, and didn't bother me at all. Not even a little bit. I just made some jokes and I played along with it and had my own little jokes to fire back and smoothed out the situation. It felt much better, and I hadn't seen him in 2 years, but to compare how I felt this time compared to 2 years ago, the last time I saw him, it was total night and day difference. It was really
And
something.
I imagine that you also began to recognize that because there was a new kid playing the game, that the whole game had changed for the whole crowd.
Yes, yes, yes. And it was just a much more relaxed feeling than how I felt being around this family member in the past.
So what you were doing was very similar to an episode that I had seen, and I was just wanting to check that out because this is what happened. There were four Catholic nuns, all dressed to the nines, only way Catholic nuns can dress. I think that there was three nuns and they had four babies.
Mm.
And I think, and they had just so this is a flight from Seoul, Korea, because I was coming from Thailand, picked up a flight from Seoul, Korea, and here's these nuns sitting right in the vicinity with four babies, taking them to adoption in the U.S. or something like that. And it was clear these nuns were not very good at taking care of babies.
Mm.
But that was their job. And so here they are, and they had one too many anyway. And so none of the kids were getting any of the kind of attention they needed for being on a long haul flight. All of them infants in swaddling clothes. And so here I am in my Buddhist robes, and I stand up and I go and ask, is it okay if I hold one of the babies? And so now I'm standing on, in the airplane and rocking it back and forth, and I can finally get this one settled down.
Yeah.
And once I got that kid settled down, within 10 minutes, those three nuns had a chance to relax because they
Mm.
didn't have any babies.
Mm.
And those babies went all over that airplane.
Mm.
That was a community. I
Mm.
didn't know it at the time what was happening, but I was creating a sangha right there, turning a situation that was desperate. And
Yeah.
I mean, the people on that plane did not like it. Long haul flight, four babies, cry, cry, cry. The nurses can't do anything, or the nuns can't do anything about it because they don't have the skills to do it.
Yep. Yep.
And the
I
next
know
thing you know,
exactly.
every child is well cared for. There's enough women on that plane to know what to do, and the kids, and so that's
That's
exactly what
great.
happens.
Yep.
We do have that kind of ability to go in and just add some wholesomeness to a tense situation, and the whole thing will change.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you reflect upon it, you'll see that, yeah, compared to the last year or 2 years ago and now, this was a much better situation, not just for me, but the joy was spreading around. That everybody was able to get along better because you were giving at least them one example of someone who was not freaked out about this guy going around jabbing everybody with his dagger.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. It makes a big difference. And like where one place I'd really see that is in the ceremonies. you know, because everyone's just way out. You know how it is, and you know, I've been a meditator for a while now, and I think I've gotten a lot better since we've been working together. But and so thank you
Oh,
very
that's
much
clear to
for
see.
that.
It really is
Yeah,
clear to see. I congratulate you on making progress, Robert. I can tell.
thank you very much. Well, thank you. It wouldn't have done it without you, so I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm just watching here, but I gotta let you know I'm watching.
All right. Thanks. Noted. But I remember like often I'd sit in the ceremonies and I used to sit with this one particular group where they would have the ceremony in this room. It's like a living room and it's like a medium-sized room. I wouldn't call it a small room, but it's definitely not a big room. It's kind of a medium-sized room. And I would sit with maybe 3 or 4 people on the same side of the wall with me. And because I'd go in my meditation kind of attitude, of just sitting with it, that whole wall that I would be on would often be much more relaxed than the wall on the opposite side of the room where they didn't have someone like that over there, and so that wall would be going crazy. And I noticed this many times, like my little area with whatever skills I had, at that time was able to be more mellow than other areas.
Hmm.
And it was really fun to kind of see that, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but just a little share.
What
And
you're
like
talking
what I
about
yeah,
is the
and
same
just what
effect that I was with the babies on that airplane. It's the same effect.
yeah, yeah, and those people over there, they'd be screaming and crying and all the it'd be something. But anyway, yeah, like babies, right? But uh,
It shows how susceptible we are. And that is, in fact, the whole concept that within Buddhism that is mudita,
yes,
most specifically, and the Brahma Viharas in general. This is what
yep.
metta really is working at that level of mudita so that you begin to change the vibrations. Let us
I
say that
actually, yeah, I
that
just
the
thought of another
people in
great story. I'll tell you.
okay, well,
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
the example that I would use is a regular minor chord. By adding a new note to it changes the flavor of that minor chord completely.
yes,
Okay. By adding a new note, it's already a sour note or a sour chord, but you can add a new note and sweeten it up.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that's the quality of music, and we can see that that's also true in the sense of music with the sympathetic vibrations that things harmonize. And
yes,
so, if you come in with notes of joy, then that's going to change the frequencies and the vibrations of people in the room. The question is, do you have enough of that to actually dominate the room? Can you take
right,
over the full room? I've had conversations with several students at times when they had the opportunity to just take the whole room over. They ran the show with their
yep,
joy, get everybody joyful, crack up the whole crowd. And they didn't come for a comedian, but they certainly got one. They loved it. Okay, so this is the idea then, is you can really lighten things up if you're a
yeah,
mind to, if you can remember to. And that is especially useful when you've got one person who is angry,
yep,
because now, if you have enough, you see, normally people, anger is a sufficiently large enough expression so that he can get other people to be angry with him. They will follow his vibrations. But if
yep,
you've got your own, then you can come back in with your own harmonizing with him and change his tune from a sour note into cheering him up.
right. Okay, I got two other good stories for you. So on this topic, uh, and they both involve the Dalai Lama. So one is I was at a ceremony and I had had several cups of medicine, and I go over next to this giant fire, and I sit down, and there's this woman next to me just screaming, and like a few like not right next to me, like maybe like like a foot or 2 feet away, and I
She's
asked
not enjoying her moment, huh?
she's
I hear you
not
telling me
enjoying
that
it. She's
she's
not
not her
enjoying it.
enjoy,
She's
not
just screaming,
enjoying her moment.
and it wasn't the good kind of screaming. It was like not happy. And so I asked the organizer, is it okay if I play a song on the on the stereo or whatever? And she said, okay, sure. And I said, I listened to this album. It was by this artist, Dwang Kachog, who's this famous Tibetan flutist. And he made an album with His Holiness the Dalai Lama together. And
Hmm.
it's a very beautiful album of the Tibetan flute and the Dalai Lama praying. and I was able to find this on YouTube.
Oh, the music to salve the savage soul. So you played this for this lady who was screaming,
Yes,
and it calmed her
yes,
right down. Isn't that
yes,
amazing?
it was amazing. It came over the speakers, and she had no idea what I was playing, but like the energy was really intense. And then this calm flute just comes in, and the Dalai Lama is praying his soft, nice prayer, and she stopped immediately. She just stopped screaming. Like she just calmed way down. All the energy calmed way down. It was really cool. It was really cool, and they
This
didn't
is
know
called
what they were
mudita,
listening to.
sympathetic
Yeah.
vibration. So she stopped vibrating at the level she was vibrating and started vibrating to a cooler vibration,
Yes.
soothing, calm. Isn't that interesting? That's exactly right. You have that kind of effect. This is another way that we can say it, though it doesn't seem to be quite the same. But on the children's ward in middle December, the kids there are unhappy children to be in the hospital. And then somebody comes in dressed as Santa Claus that knows how to play the part.
Right. Patch
And there
Adams.
is, and there is
Yeah.
more healing going on in that hospital right that very moment than any nurse or doctor can do.
Mm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, it,
Absolutely. That joy, bringing joy into it. And all of a sudden, the kids forget all about their misery and their suffering, and they can't go here and do that or whatever like that. So, joy actually, rather than having an MD, I would rather have an RD behind my name.
RD, meaning.
Yes. Reader's Digest, in the sense of laughter is the best medicine. That was a long, ongoing article. Laughter is the best medicine,
Mm,
and it really
mm,
is. Laughter
that's
is, in
great.
fact, the best medicine. But we're talking about it not in the sense of ha 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 as laughter, but in the sense of spreading joy.
Yep. Yep. It's funny. It's one reason, and this is my other story of the Dalai Lama. It's kind of a two-part story. It's one reason I got this Dalai Lama picture. Is just it's just a joyful picture. He's smiling. It looks like he's about to laugh. And I just
It
really
looks like
enjoy.
that they snapped the photo between laughs.
Yeah, you can see like he's just
Sure.
like
Yeah, he's a
about to
very
giggle.
jolly guy. I've been
Yeah,
around him. I've seen him. Yeah, he's just like
yeah,
the Kabbuta Dasa.
yeah, and it's funny, because I the reason I got this picture is my one of my friends who has these San Pedro cactus ceremonies told me this great story. Our mother is very Catholic, and she got her this poster of the Dalai Lama, and she would just sit there crying sometimes next to this poster. And she asked her mother, like, Mom, why are you crying? She said, he's just such a beautiful man, you know,
Well, she should
and and
laugh at that,
and
not cry.
yeah, but it was really affecting her. And so I was like, that's a nice story. So I got one for myself, and I got one for my dad and for my mom too. And my dad is someone that is very cynical and loves to criticize and negative thoughts all the time,
I wondered where you got all of that. I
and
could have guessed
and
it. I could have guessed that.
yeah, and he loves to talk about how people are screwing him over all the time, and he's a self-made businessman, and so he just, part of that whole lifestyle he's chosen is to have people trying to screw him over all the time, and get his money and this and that, and so.
Well, that's what business is. Business, in every regard that I know, is what businessman can make deals with other businessmen so that one of them gets screwed by the other. That's what business is all about.
Yeah, my dad, he even says that kind of thing. Like he said, everyone's stealing from you, so you got to steal a little bit as well. He likes to say
Well,
stuff
that's
like
not
that.
always the case. Sometimes there's windfalls in the sense that you didn't intend to steal it and they didn't know you stole it, but it happened and here it is.
Right,
We call that a windfall.
right. Well, like his version of that might be like he'd buy bottled water for 29 cents and then he'd turn around and sell it for 2.99. And he'd be like, they don't know that I'm buying this for 29 cents. They have no idea, but they're
Exactly.
buying it. They're buying it for 2.99, so I'm happy. And that was his whole. But it's funny because I got him this Dalai Lama picture, and I said, Dad, like, if you're ever having a bad day, you feel you get, your the technical support team for your car, they screwed you over, or this screwed you over, that screwed you over. You can just look at this Dalai Lama picture, and I
Hmm.
hope it just helps you have some faith in humanity. And
I hope
he
he
was quite.
remembers to look at it because I
I
mean
hope
you're
he
you're
does.
actually just teaching him Anapanasati with a picture frame.
Yeah,
You could have said just
yeah,
take a deep breath and enjoy the photo, and that's full Anapanasati right there. All he
yeah,
has to
and
do is remember it, and that's easy to do if he keeps the photo of the Dalai Lama there on his desk. That's really wholesome.
thank you, and I hope he makes use of it. I don't know. I haven't talked to him for a few months, but I hope he makes use of it. But
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, anything that we can use
yeah,
as a reminder to remember that it's okay to be happy.
yeah, yeah.
That
No, totally.
you don't have to wait until the work's done in order to be happy. If we wait until the work's done, we're never happy. We'll be dead before we're happy because there's never end to the work.
Yep,
So
yep.
don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy, and that actually would take us into right livelihood. What you were,
All right.
yeah,
Let's do that next time. I think that we've pretty
sure,
well covered it at least enough to know that we're going to
yeah,
start working on keeping things wholesome and investigating what's wholesome,
yes,
including how the mind works, what the aggregates are, in the sense of what is consciousness, what is perception, so that you begin to get a handle on it because you can see your mind in operation. This is
right,
the state of mind that we want to get into, is so that we're paying attention to only wholesome things. We're not trying to keep the mind out of the gutter. It's not in the gutter right now. It's functioning properly. So now let's take a look at it.
sure. And do you recommend I look at any suttas in particular aside from 111?
111 is the one. You go get what this is and understand what we're talking about to begin to see the slittering away, the rising and passing away of all these wholesome things. Begin to start watching the mind, how it works. Look at how your investigation. Look at the Eightfold Noble Path in that regard. In the this is what's happening right now kind of way of looking at it. This is my intention. This is my Sukkha. This is my Piti. I can see the Piti going up and down. I can see the Sukkha going up and down. I'm actually looking at that stuff as it's happening inside.
Sure,
That's the investigation that we need to do, is
sure,
to
cool.
really get it. Because if you do that, by knowing it very well, you can begin to take control over it. You can begin to
Right,
experiment with it. Not only do you see that this happens and then that happens, we can say that, oh, that means that I can make that happen and then this will happen.
sure. Sounds
And you
very good.
begin to learn how to control the mind. Right now, the mind
Yes,
is completely out of control with most people, and they generally run by instinct,
right,
which is often false positives into negative feelings. And here we're
sure.
making sure that the mind is positive and wholesome and healthy and working function properly. And now we can begin to see how that works, how that happens.
Right. And, one other thing I think is worth mentioning that has really changed my day-to-day life as part of this practice is I often will just think to myself, like just, walking down the street or whatever, like, you know what, I can do it. Whatever it
Uh-huh.
is I'm going to do today, I can do it.
I can
Like,
do it.
I can do it, like I got this, and it's a very nice like part of my day, that's arisen, or it's all gonna be okay, it's all good,
That
like that.
that
Yeah.
really is what Satchmo's song is.
Hmm. And what's Satchmo's song aside from that?
What a wonderful world.
Huh.
Icy skies of blue and red roses too. That's a winter song.
Hmm.
Hmm. What a wonderful world. Now
Hmm.
that's the right attitude. We're not talking about how wonderful the world is. We're talking about the attitude. What a wonderful world.
Sure. Sure. And I wish I had that all the time, but I have it sometimes, and it's very nice,
Keep keep
Yeah.
keep going. Keep developing
Yeah.
the skills. Keep looking at it. Keep asking the question: do I have skies of blue and red roses too? Is my wonderful world wonderful right now? And you hot diggity dog, it sure is.
Sure. Sure. So
That's
then
the
yeah,
investigation. Make things really wholesome.
sure. So I have another question about all this. So, how long does this whole process take usually? Like how did like is there kind of a usual timetable, or
Yes, two
yeah,
weeks.
really?
2 weeks.
Okay. So 2 weeks
That's
for
what's it. That's how it took. How long it took Sariputta in the Sutta 111, a fortnight. Also in the Sutra number 10 and the Majjhima Nikaya, which is the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha there says that it takes about 7 years. But never mind about 7 years, you can do it in 7 weeks. Then he says, never mind 7 weeks, you could do this in 7 days, and you can double the speed that Sariputta did it because it took him 2 weeks. Okay, so
oh,
if it's
sure,
taking years and years and years, that means it's doing something wrong. If we do
sure,
it right, we can get it done.
sure.
And
Cool.
that's how much wholesome stuff you can pile on there. If you pile enough wholesome stuff on there, it'll begin to stick.
Sure.
You get the
Cool.
point? I mean, this is something we can say, okay, well, I'll practice and get a little bit today and maybe a tiny little bit tomorrow. Oh, no, you pile it on. We're talking about if a teaspoon of sugar helps the medicine go down, then go buy 100-pound bag of sugar already. You get the point?
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure,
overdo the joy. Intentionally overdo it.
for sure.
Exuberant.
Okay, sounds good. And oh, here's another question I thought of.
Oh,
So,
enough already.
all right. Well,
Tomorrow. Tomorrow.
okay, okay, all right. Next time.
Okay.
And oh, okay. One last topic, maybe without the video recorder for this other topic. Maybe you can save it for tomorrow. But um, um,
Okay.
all right.
Well, let's do it tomorrow then.
Okay, cool. Tomorrow's
All
fine.
right.
All right.
Okay. We'll
Cheers.
see
Thank
you.
you very much. See you soon.